In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a quick look at the tropics, diving into some upcoming storms where there is some snowfall, some severe weather, some big time rain events on the way for a lot of the United States. We're going to be talking about an upcoming cool down, which could be a cold front, anywhere from basically a typical cold front to a more significant Arctic blast. We do have some kind of discrepancies within the models that we're going to be taking a look at today. So there's a whole lot to discuss. Let's just dive into things. And first things first, as we've been kind of doing, we're going to take a look here at the European ensemble model for the tropics. And we do see this system here across the kind of southeast Caribbean. Or Southwest Caribbean, better yet. We do see this one very close to Central America. This one is expected to slam into Central America as a pretty big rainmaker, maybe a little bit of a wind maker, but likely not too much development out of that one. Originally, you guys know this one was kind of being flirting with heading northward towards the United States, and a lot of people were sharing that, but kind of all along I've thought that this one would just head really far just south into Central America and not really develop. We do have this system here over the Eastern Caribbean, and this one is a little bit interesting. We do have some models floating with a little bit of development, especially if it heads pretty far north of Cuba, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. The ones that do suppress it far south into those islands have a lot less development. So there is some interesting things going on. Let's take a look at the GFS ensemble model, and we get a lot less of this system. We really don't see it at all here. And then we get a little bit more out of this system hitting Central America and maybe making it through into the Southern Gulf here and then wanting to do something. So there's a little bit of potential, but as you know, this is kind of we're grasping at straws here at this point to kind of try to find any signs of development. I just want you guys to be aware of everything that's possible in the upcoming pattern, and those are kind of the possibilities with those ones. I'm still leaning towards little to no development with both systems at this point. As we just take a look at the European model, we do see that this afternoon on Friday, there is actually some snowfall ongoing as we've been predicting for the Rockies, starting in Wyoming, Montana, Idaho on the north end, and even extending down into Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and a little bit of Nevada as well. Overnight, we are going to see quite a bit of this actually stretch into some of the further south Rockies, even like in between Arizona and New Mexico, pretty far south in Arizona and Mexico as well, New Mexico that is. We're seeing these mountainous areas continuing to see snowfall into the overnight hours. The jet stream at this point is doing something like this, so we're seeing a little bit of a ridge in the east, although some areas like the east coast are still rather cool. So we have some cold in here despite the ridge, which is obviously not the most common pattern, but that is what we're seeing. And then we have a little bit of a ridge in the west with more of a trough over the northern Rockies and northern plains. That is the look as of today. Let's move towards tomorrow afternoon, and we will see some continued snowfall for the four corner states. So a lot of those mountainous areas are going to continue to see a bit of snowfall trending in for those areas. As we keep going towards Sunday afternoon on October 20th, we still have some snowfall here for the four corner states. An incredibly flat jet stream here, descending slightly towards the east, but really, really flat by the end of this weekend. We do have a storm system in Western Canada that is bringing a lot of Canadian snowfall to the Cascades and Rockies here, and a little bit of rainfall for the Pacific Northwest of the United States. As we just keep on tracking along, here is Monday on October 21st. We do have a potential severe weather event ongoing here for a bit of the southern plains here, even into the northern plains like South Dakota and Nebraska. We see Colorado in there, Kansas, Oklahoma, down through Texas. Potential for some severe weather is going to be at the forefront with this little mini system, so we'll be tracking that possibility. I know some storm chasers are heading out there for the slim but very, very real threat of tornadoes out there, as we have this kind of flared out look. Some supercell activity could be possible, and you know, fall is kind of the second severe weather season, so it shouldn't come as the biggest surprise ever that we're seeing this. We do see the Northwest continuing to see storminess, mostly snowfall in Canada, mostly rainfall in the United States, although for some of the Cascades of Washington, we are seeing some snowfall there as well. Let's take this towards Tuesday on October 22nd, and what we see is a low forming for south central Canada And what we see is a little bit of a ridge trying to develop for the west, a trough underneath this low, and then a ridge to the east here. So we're seeing this warmth surging to the east here, also trying to surge for the west, and then this really cold look in this trough that should develop a cold front here underneath this low. We should watch that happen, and this will move towards the eastern states for mid to late week next week. Here is Wednesday, and sure enough, again, a really healthy warm bubble out west, and this is going to cause a lot of this cold to spill over into the eastern states, and that is what we're seeing here. Our stronger low is in eastern Canada. We do have a secondary low here, a little bit smaller, and overall we see something like this as far as the cold front boundary. So we will see a lot of, especially these areas, cool off here in the upcoming pattern. We will look at the GFS model a little bit later on, which has a lot more of a major cooldown for this time period. But that's Wednesday. Let's see Thursday, and that cold front does pass through. We see the stronger low for Canada, a little bit of a weaker nor'easter developing off of New England, and we do get quite a bit of heavier rainfall and some winds there for the northeast. Overall, we see a bit of a ridge in the west and a bit of a trough here in the east. Always keep in mind that even where I'm drawing out kind of the hypothetical jet stream, we likely have cooler temperatures underneath that as well. In general, wherever we see these bumps, you can kind of follow them in here. But that's going to bring warmer temperatures to a lot of these areas. And where we have a lot of this happening, where it's descending just like this, you can expect to see cooler temperatures than what's typical. Keep that in mind. As we move towards Friday, things get a lot quieter. Still cool in the east. Again, as we draw this hypothetical jet stream, we have something like this ongoing. So still rather cool in the east. And again, even in the southeast, where we do have some showers popping up in there. But we also have warmer temperatures overall trending in for a lot of the west, with some storminess entering onto Oregon and California there that could spell a change in the pattern. Let's see what happens by Saturday afternoon, and sure enough, we get a pretty major storm system taking place for the southwest of Canada, and this does bring impacts to the northwest of the United States. Again, mountainous snowfall, lower elevation, and coastal rainfall is going to be the trend here with this one, and we've continued to see a really frequent pattern of storms moving through here, which is indicative of a more La Nina type pattern. Obviously, we are heading into a weaker La Nina, if not a colder neutral ENSO, which is basically a very weak La Nina that's not even an official La Nina. It's not even La Nina enough to be considered a La Nina, but it does kind of lean that way, if it makes sense. Let's keep going. I want to take us into Sunday on October 27th now. And this whole stormy pattern kind of brings about a colder west and a little bit of a warmer east. But the further towards the east coast you go, the more there's kind of a trough sitting over these areas. So I'm going to draw this in to kind of remind you guys that some cold is heading into there. A lot more cold for the west than there is in the east there, though. And then we have this kind of ridging pattern in the middle. So that is the overall jet stream look around the nation. We do see continued northwest activity, both in the forms of rainfall and snowfall. Some rainfall for the Great Lakes. And another important reminder, we're not going to see this necessarily on this model run, but there is a strong low here over central Canada that's likely going to kind of follow the jet stream south of the Hudson Bay. And frequently these have been bringing cold fronts along with them. So expect the potential that by the end of October, and we have seen models flirting with this, but we could have another major cool down on the way for the east for the very, very end of October. That is kind of something that I have been watching for. We see a little bit of reassurance of that, 998 here. We see a little bit of a ridge look in the west with a trough centered more underneath that low, and then a ridge here in the east. So we could be seeing another similar cooldown to the upcoming one taking place. And this warmth kind of building in the west is a clear sign that we could have cold funneling into this trough, which again, likely Monday or maybe Tuesday, we would begin to see a cold front developing here, and that's what would drag that cold back into the east. We'll see the temperatures in a minute, but here's the total precipitation. Overall, a lot for the northwest. Again, we've been in a very La Nina-like pattern. We do get quite a bit with this severe weather activity happening across the plains, and really not too much outside of that. So let's take a look at the anomalies. And as you can see, above average for the southwest of Canada and the northwest of the United States there. We see for the four corner states, a little bit into the plains here, where we see this kind of thunderstorm and severe weather activity flare up. We get some above average activity in there, but look at the east. I mean, if we were to draw a line down the middle of the nation here, we are seeing below average precipitation for the entire area east of that line. So certainly a very dry pattern that we've been in for well over a month now looks to continue for at least the next 10 days. Absolutely mind-blowing how dry we've been. And bad news for areas that have already been in a little bit of a drought, because it is only going to get worse as long as we see these dry conditions continuing. Snowfall, a little bit less than we have been seeing. There is some specks of snowfall for areas in the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, as well as the Northeast, mostly in mountainous areas there. But the main story here is the Cascades and then the Rockies, where we do see a few inches for the United States side of things. We do see, in the purples and pinks, we're starting to get like 10 to 20 inches and even 20 inches plus there in those pastels that we see for Colorado and mountains of Washington, and especially there in western Canada, where we're seeing feet of snowfall. Definitely starting to get snowier. Again, the previous 10-day period was a little bit snowier than this upcoming one, but we're still continuing to see pretty consistent snowfall out there. Good news for skiing. Definitely good news for skiing. Let's take a look here at the temperature pattern on the European model. Keep in mind, like I said, we're going to take a look at the GFS model as well, which disagrees a little bit. We continue to see the cold temperatures here in the east. So these areas have stayed cooler, and also the west is cooler. So typically when the west is cooler, that's going to push the warmth eastward. We're going to see that, but what we're going to see as this map is going to start getting crazy here, but a low, again, over south central Canada, heading along kind of that same arrow there, is going to begin to bring a cold front with it, and we're going to see this cold air follow in, and then we're actually going to see these areas warm up along the west coast. So try to dissect what that means without listening. That's absolutely crazy. Let's just watch it play out. Again, cool down kind of sticks around for the east, but the warm up starts to move in. The west stays cool, but here it comes. This is Tuesday, Wednesday the 23rd. Here comes that cold front. And then Thursday the 24th, Friday the 25th. And then watch this. It wants to just stick around in the east for a little bit until that warm-up moves in. But again, we could be seeing another cold front situation moving eastward, which will bring down some Arctic air and potentially bring a cool down for the end of October timeframe. The GFS model is a little bit more bullish with the cold air, so let's just break this one down. Again, cool down for the east lasting until this warm-up comes in, and that's going to start Tuesday, Wednesday, but look at this cool down coming in. Thursday, you can already tell this is a lot more significant than the European model. We have widespread below average temperatures for a lot of the Midwest, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and especially Eastern Canada. And I think the reason it's a lot more consistent is because we have this way bigger warm-up in the West than what we saw in the European model. So that is just allowing for this cold air to really surface itself for the eastern states overall. This is Friday the 25th, Saturday the 26th, and it does come to an end very similarly to what the European model showed. And we don't really get that Halloween cooldown here on this model, but with what the European model has been showing, I would say it's still a really good possibility. We're seeing warmer temperatures trending in here. Basically, after this cooldown is up, the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, 1st, 2nd, 3rd here, that would be a very, very considerable warm pattern for the East. We'll have to see if that comes true or not. But again, the European model looks primed to bring more cold air into the east, and it is the long range, so we will see them probably flip-flop a little bit. We'll have to see what ends up happening. The Atlantic 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook here, we do have a 20% chance across the board, so both over the next 2 days and 7 days here for this Caribbean system. Our Central America system has bumped up to a 70% chance of development over the next 48 hours and 7 days. As you can see, it is expected to just hit Central America there, so any development that happens would likely just bring a storm right on shore for them. There's very little time for this to develop, so we'll see what happens. The National Hurricane Center thinks we're going to see development. I'm slightly doubtful, but again, anything's possible. We will see what happens with this one. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. Be sure to subscribe. We do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.